I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. Pay my respect to their elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, discharge the duties entrusted to us for the common good and in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please have a seat. We have an apology from Councillor Miles, who's away at the moment. Move Councillor Miles, second Councillor Williams.
Councillor Collins.
Councillor Collins, Councillor Williams, thank you. And are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. I move to the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. And Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, and I notice that there's an amendment to those. Councillor Sanderson brought to my attention that there was a 4-minute period during the last meeting where 2 councillors had left the chamber, which left us short of a quorum. The number of matters were resolved in their absence. Most were part of a block resolution to receive and note the reports. 1 recommended a deferral of the matter in question, and 1 was a leave of absence report. So in order to rectify this, I propose that these items are recommitted and redetermined tonight. They're items 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 8.1 and 8.3. Councillor Williams, Councillor Collins, second of that. Any further discussion required? Councillor Williams.
Councillor Sanderson wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was Councillor Collins, sorry.
Yeah, no, but in terms of seconding the minutes...
No, that's correct.
I've already indicated.
Yeah, fixed it. Thanks. Councillor Collins. Thank you. Any further discussion needed? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. We'll make that amendment. Are there any further things related to the minutes that anybody's aware of? No? Thank you. Any business arising? No? We have one speaker this evening, and that's Mr. Atkin. So, Mr. Atkin, welcome.
Thanks very much, Mayor.
And you have 3 minutes.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I want to make some observations just in relation to the conduct of the last meeting, which, as you acknowledge, Mayor, was a very important matter going to our environment and one that was of strong community interest. Just want to remind you of the context where we all knew there were 4 community groups interested in the matter. 2 community groups, Nelson Parade Action Group and the Save Hunters Hill Municipality Coalition, had a strong view one way, and the Nelson Parade Remediation Group, Rosemary, the Franklins and the Morgans, and then the Hunters Hill Environment Action Group had a view the other way. The 2 of those groups, both the Save Hunters Hill Municipality Coalition and NPAG, had a declared strategy of influencing the council through rallying opposition to the proposal. And I'm relying on the article that was published in the TWT on the 10th of July, where that was the stated objective. That became even more important because, as you know, the recommendation from your staff was actually to engage with the PPR, not reject it. It was also borne out, you'll recall, when Philippa Clark speaking, actually the first thing she did was present a petition with the number of people that they'd rallied to object to it. So with that context, if I can just come to I've got 2 real concerns, and with the greatest respect, Councillor Williams, my first concern is in relation to your conduct. In my view, you failed to declare a non-pecuniary interest in the matter. On looking at the website for the Save Hunters Hill Municipality Coalition, you're described as a co-convener of that coalition. If you look at the code of conduct which you've adopted as a council as required, in determining whether someone has a non-pecuniary interest, you have regard to the strength of their affiliation with the relevant groups involved. in my view, you can't get a much stronger affiliation than being co-convener of one of the four contending groups. So in my view, if you look at the code, you not only were co-convener of the coalition, you played an active role in the campaign, you were aligned closely with your other fellow co-convener, Mr. Jenkin, and you spoke strongly, I understand, at the Wheel Park meeting. My second concern, with the greatest respect, Mayor, is in relation to your own position. I acknowledge I don't know your relationship with the Save Hunters Hill municipality. My concern, and I'm only going on facts that have been reported to me, but you attended and participated at the Wheel Park meeting. The Wheel Park meeting was convened by NPAG, was convened with a view to rallying the opposition consistent with their strategy to influence council. And my understanding is that you welcomed people to the meeting and quoted, I think in the press at least, as speaking with concern about the project. Now, I respect, Mayor, you've shown a very close interest in this issue for 18 months. The difficulty to my mind in your position arose, one, when the council meeting was convened, when you had a council staff recommendation one way, and you knew that two of the groups were raising or relying on the extent of opposition and the numbers for their argument in face of the more immediate personal interest of the members, particularly the Nelson Pay Remediation Group. The other thing, with respect, Mayor, that may not have been of your doing, but certainly stood out to any observer of the meeting, departure from the standard of having more than two speakers, one either way. I think no quibble with that whatsoever. There were 13 speakers, and the order of the speakers seems to have been chosen in a way, I don't know who did the choosing, but the order of the speakers seems to have been chosen in a way that favoured those people opposing it, with Mr. Jenkin being given the last spot. On previous occasions, it had always been done alphabetically, and I'm aware of that because as an A, I often get called on first. On this occasion, Mr. Quinn was called on first and Mr. Jenkin last, which again is curious. I don't know the facts, but again, to the extent that you, with respect, Mr. Mayor, had the opportunity to influence the order of speakers, that tends to suggest a degree of bias in the way that they were chosen. The only other thing I'll say before sitting down or taking questions is I'm aware one other councillor, Councillor Crazel, you attended the Wheel Park meeting. I think attending the meeting perhaps took a risk, and I understand from a comment that you may have made to one of the people there that you didn't appreciate how it was being positioned. The only thing I'd say, which I think you're sensitive to anyway, the use of the expression nuclear waste, which you made later in your Facebook post the following week, or a few days afterwards, it's exactly what we don't want. So I'm not going to give you a hard time about it.
And you picked me up, and I did get my words mixed, and I deleted it immediately.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So look, it's a very emotive. You can see I'm more nervous tonight, frankly speaking to you, than I was on the night. Not because, and look, that's moved on. They'll make what they make of whatever your submissions, the council submissions, mean. But I know, and you'll say all my perspective is distorted because I was on the losing side, so to speak. It's not a matter of winning or losing, but it wasn't a well-conducted meeting for the reasons that I said. And I may be missing something here, but it seems to me as I think the clearest issue with you, with respect, Councillor Williams, as co-convener of one of the contending parties, I think your non-pecuniary interest is quite plain. As you know, I asked the General Manager, and I've tried to be as open as I possibly can with all of you on this. I don't want you to play politics on it. I would like a response, a considered response from you. I'm conscious I've now got the balance of 3 months, so less 3 weeks in which I can make a formal complaint. I don't necessarily want to make a formal complaint because that will just escalate things, but I think there were some fundamental things incorrect with the way that meeting was conducted. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all very much for listening to me.
All right, thank you, Mr. Atkins. Thanks for coming along tonight. Thank you for the way you've presented the issues. Council, is there any questions of Mr. Atkins?
Not of Mr. Atkin or General Manager. That's just on the Mr. Atkin raised the issue of the speaking order. Could you maybe speak to how that is actually determined?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, as speakers come through, there's a council officer that collates the list. So the Mayor doesn't choose the order of speakers. He's consulted with as far as, how many he would like to speak, and as the speaker raised, usually you might have 2 for, 2 against, but the decision was made to hear from all speakers on the night. But it's a council officer who orders the speakers based on as they come in.
So does that mean Richard Quinn got his form in first? Is that what happened?
I believe so. As I said, I don't do it, Councillor
okay.
Collins. It's a council officer who takes those requests to speak.
Just to clarify, I didn't see the list until it was printed on the night.
But I know that Mr. Morgan put his name down late and after Mr. Jenkins. I don't know why Mr. Jenkins was last.
Okay, I don't know either.
Maybe take it on notice then?
Yep.
Look into
Take
how
it
that
on
came
notice.
about. Yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Collins.
I'd like to bring forward item 4.2.
Yes.
Thank you.
Seconded. Councillor McLaughlin. All in favour? Is carried. 4.2. The installation of drainage on Boronia 3 Oval. Moved. Councillor Collins.
Yeah,
You're
with
moving
the
the recommendation?
With number 3, if I can. I think is that right?
It's in.
It is, okay,
contained
cool.
in the notice.
Great, fantastic.
So you're moving that recommendation. Page
Yes.
70, we got the right one? Yeah. Seconded. Councillor Grasso, I think, might have just beaten you to it, Councillor Sassy. Councillor Collins, would you like to speak to that?
No, look, it's pretty straightforward. I might just I'll just leave it for now.
All right. Anybody wishing to speak against the recommendation?
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Williams, question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. At the moment, there's 3 options, and the one that's now part of the motion is item 3. And there's the installation of the tank, $90,000. I don't see in the report any discussion about purpose of that tank in terms of the reusability of the water that will be captured. Going to capture surface water as well as subsurface water. It's going to be capturing subsurface water only. And there will be an issue in terms of the leaching effect of salts and also the leaching. And I think they had problems with salt levels and all of the current storage as well, particularly for the poor water. So I was just wondering the effectiveness of the tank is not really explained in terms of what yield would be expected, quality of water, ability to do that. For information in relation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in part I'd need to take that on notice in terms of the technical detail. However, under environmental impact assessment, there is a comment in terms of if option 3 were approved, the reuse of water gathered would help alleviate issues such as when we are experiencing drought, and option 3 does provide filtered water. But as far as your questions regarding yield and the quality, that's a question I'd have to take on notice.
Councillor Williams, is any further?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody wishing to speak for the motion and the recommendation there? Anybody wishing to speak against? I'll put the recommendation for 4.2. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Okay. We'll go back to 3.1, the motion for the local government conference. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the motion. I presume Councillor Williams will second it. Let's just find my notes on that one.
Move Councillor Sanderson, second Councillor Williams.
Yes. Right. If I just remind Council at an ordinary meeting on number 4436 on the 26th of March 2018, the two motions that went to the Australian Local Government Association annual conference. The first was on financial recognition of local government, the Australian Constitution. The second on democratic recognition. As I recall, both motions were supported by all councillors other than Councillor Collins. I would argue that financial recognition should follow the recommendations of the Gilbert and Toden Centre for Public Law, which was guided by some of Australia's foremost constitutional lawyers, including Professor George William and Professor Andrew Lynch, who I was exceptionally fortunate to come to know in my study of constitutional law. However, as Local Government New South Wales already has financial recognition as part of its policy framework, I'll leave it to that detailed argument sometime when we're closer to the much needed constitutional reform. As I've suggested in the background given in the business paper, democratic recognition of local government in the Australian Constitution should also be pursued, as many state constitutions permit local government bodies to be merely appointed. New South Wales is a case in point there. We need to understand that the New South Wales Constitution Act is merely an act of Parliament, which can be and has been on many occasions amended by the legislature. The relevant section in the Constitutional Act is section 51.1, which states that there shall continue to be a system of local government for the state under which duly elected or duly appointed local government bodies can be constituted with responsibilities acting for better government in those parts of the state that they are from time to time subject to that system of local government. So it's hardly a guarantee of democratic local government in the Constitution. We rely on the Local Government Act, and that can be repealed and altered again at the will of the legislature. I think there are strong guarantees for constitutional or continuation of local government, as we know it, are required. This motion advocates a more robust democratic recognition than was put to the Australian people by the Hawke government in 1988. In 2010, there was a paper by Dr. Nicola McGarity and Professor George Williams, which rejected the 1988 referendum proposal for democratic recognition as doing no more than acknowledging the existing system of local government. They concluded that, among other things, that institutional recognition should at very least require that local government representatives be directly chosen by the people. Interestingly, that term comes from sections 7 and 24 of the Constitution. And it's from those sections of the Constitution that our High Court has derived incredibly important pieces of judicial legislation in terms of freedom of speech on political matters. I think in the long run that potentially gives us or could provide the court with the ability to read greater strengths into the rights of local government. So I think that this is a very important reform. The other thing that McGarity and Williams recommend is that the Constitution specify that for any local government body to be dismissed or amalgamated, that should require an act of state parliament, or alternatively by a regulation that has a disallowance or may be disallowed by the parliament. There was a third item that they mentioned, which is a bit difficult to achieve, and that is that the three tiers of government should behave or cooperate more with one another on matters of common interest. I don't quite know how you legislate for that. So I think the motion that I put does cover the first two. And the other thing was that, this just hadn't been drawn out of the air. At the time that I put this motion to council some time ago, there was a lot of research went into this, and care was taken to make sure that what I was advocating was consistent with the recommendations of very knowledgeable legal centres such as the Gilbert and Tobin Centre for Public Law. As a result, the second part of the recommendation is actually directly taken from the 2011 final report on the expert panel on constitutional recognition of local government. The last point I'd make is that thanks to this council, the Australian Local Government Association passed a similar motion at its 2018 National General Assembly. So it will seem appropriate that we should now advocate the same thing for consistency at the upcoming Local Government New South Wales conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Sorry.
Somebody wish to speak?
Questions if I can?
You have a question through me?
Through you, yes. So are you saying that you're not, the question on the financial recognition, you're not putting that one? Or to the...
Councillor Sanderson? Yeah.
I'm a bit confused.
Mr Mayor, I made the point that as it turned out, the financial recognition one that we put to ALGA in 2018 wasn't accepted, and from my understanding was because of the logistics of getting the people to vote on that particular one. In any case, both ALGA and Local Government New South Wales already have quite strong positions on financial recognition, and I strongly advocate that. What I'm saying, as I said earlier in what I had to say, is that what I'm talking about there is detail. I clearly support what Gilbert and Tobin have recommended, and I would be arguing that case at the point when we get a bit closer to the reform that we so badly need. But I don't see there's a lot of point in getting into semantics over precisely how we achieve financial recognition at this point in time of Local Government New South Wales, when at the present time they haven't looked at the democratic recognition. What I propose is, given the large volume of motions that we do have, I think it's more important to preference the democratic rather than financial, which they've already got covered.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Now I understand. You're acknowledging that it's already policy. Okay, I follow that. Right. Through you, Mr Mayor, another question of Councillor Sanderson. How many councils in New South Wales are appointed?
128, I believe.
Appointed instead of...
Oh, well, no.
So no councils in New South Wales are appointed?
Well, there are things like there's a body that looks after the unincorporated areas to the west of the state. There's another body that looks after the Norfolk Island, and I believe also the other island out there. I just can't recall the name at the present time. But there are Lord Howe. But I believe there are at least 3 that are not incorporated.
So, one more question, follow up. So, what is the objective of if at the moment all councils are elected, according to your motion, they should still be able to be dismissed if they're not competent and reappointed in accordance with the current law, which says that they are to be an election is eventually held. What am I missing here? What will this actually change? Because I don't actually understand what it will change
Okay, Councillor Sanderson.
in actual effect.
Well,
Or is it hypothetical?
I think it won't necessarily, if things are going well, it probably won't change a lot. But if we're faced with a situation like we were at the time that the amalgamations were proposed, this would make a big difference. Because I could see a potential case where we could take it directly to the High Court, because the High Court is a court of first instance in terms of constitutional law. If it's a constitutional matter, then we could potentially have direct access to the High Court.
Thank you.
Can I help a little on that?
Yes, please.
If I can, if you would let me.
Well,
Can I ask
do you have a question of
Councillor
Councillor
Crasser? Yes, can you
Well, I
explain?
think what Councillor Sanderson was saying is that at the moment we could be appointed. We could be elected or appointed. So what he's asking here is that it be a democratic process. So although currently we weren't appointed, constitutionally we can be. So I think the suggestion here is that we ask to have that taken out of the Constitution and that any appointment of a local government body be democratic. Is that correct?
Close, but
Yes.
Councillor Sanderson, let's have Councillor Sanderson's view on it.
Okay.
That might be better.
Well,
Might be clearer.
again, as I noted in my introduction, that the Constitution of New South Wales is actually an act of Parliament. States like Victoria have greater protections to prevent those acts being modified. New South Wales does not, so that Parliament could change our Constitution, and it has done on many occasions. The Federal Constitution is quite different. The Federal Constitution has rather onerous requirements for its alteration. It has to be passed by a majority of the people as well as the majority of the states. 6 states, that means you've got to get 4. So it's rare for constitutional amendments to get up. So that I think that possibly better explains, if it's entrenched in the Australian Constitution, it is very difficult to change. If the protection, which is limited protection, is in the New South Wales Constitution, then the protection is very, very limited.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor
I'll
Collins.
speak against, as a constitutional conservative. I will defend the Constitution, which I think we should treasure. We are a federation of states, and like it or not, as a local government, we are an extension of the state government. They created us. They are, we exist by virtue of them. They are, state government is our mum and dad, whether you like it or not. We do not belong, local government does not belong in the federal constitution, because the federal constitution is for the federation of the states, and local government is a state government matter. Now, I understand that there's been some tension around here with the state government. That doesn't mean we can just go and run to the federal government and ask them to protect us, and go to a referendum, ask all of Australia to essentially self-preservation. This really is all it's about. If you look at it, this is about stopping the state government from being able to dissolve us or appoint us. It's not what the Australian people are asking for. I think it is probably more a matter for local councillors that sort of want their, and I actually think it's a little bit out of touch that we're here in this council. I'm not going to oppose all these motions that you put in, by the way, tonight, so I'm not just doing it for the sake of it. But I do think that we need to be mindful that the residents of Hunters Hill elected us to, look out for Hunters Hill and pursue Hunters Hill's interests, not to try and protect ourselves and run to the federal government to try and protect us from what essentially is being portrayed as the boogeyman. The state government is not going to ever appoint a local council. If they did, if they did, that would be the time. If they sacked all, stopped all elections, I don't know if they could do that. They'd have to do it through an act of parliament, and then appointed all the councils. I think that would be the time where we would then try and look at sort of constitutional issues if that was the will of people. But at the moment, it is no problem. There is not a single council, other than some minor little borough or strip of land that has a sort of trustees appointed. There is not a single council that is appointed in accordance with the possibility that is afforded in the state constitution. So it's not a problem, and I tend to think that we should not try and solve things that aren't problems. This is a problem we don't have, so let's just focus on the issues that actually matter to residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share a totally different view, along with 99% of local government throughout Australia. I've sat through the debate at conferences in relation to this matter, and local government nationally is unified in its requirement or request for constitutional recognition. It was again reconfirmed at the recent Alba Assembly, and it was interesting that every politician that got up and spoke, including the acting Prime Minister, all very strongly committed themselves to supporting constitutional recognition of local government. So all levels of government see it as a significant issue. All councils see it as a significant issue. And it's enshrining the right for our local community to have a democratically elected council. And while those powers, or while the protection is not there, it's too late to act if something goes wrong. You've got to get things right to start with, so everybody understands very clearly the rules and the requirements. And I am convinced that nationally and locally, people want their local councils democratically elected by the community. There's the other side to this issue as well, which I noticed in the press in the last couple of days, and it stems to the financial side of things. But we had our Prime Minister speaking about the flood compensation for, I think it was Rockhampton or Townsville, one of the towns in Queensland that was ravaged by floods 18 months ago. The federal government committed $3.2 billion to the restoration and reconstruction of that community. And the council is now saying it hasn't got any of that money. The mayor was on the radio to say that. The government is adamant that it's given that money to that community. It passed it to, its only legal entity it can pass it to, and that's the state government. The state government is the one that hasn't passed the money on to, according to the Prime Minister, to those needing communities. So there is a very important issue here of having local government recognised so that funds and federal government can deal directly with councils rather than going through an intermediary that sometimes takes a percentage off, sometimes in this case appears to take the whole amount of money. So there's two issues here. One is the democratic rights of our local community to be guaranteed that right of having their local council, not at the whim of the state government. And secondly, federal governments would get, local communities would get a lot more benefit out of federal governments being able to pass money directly to local governments and community rather than going through an intermediary with state government.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? I put the motion. If you'd like it, you're welcome. Rather reply, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't fully comprehend most of Councillor Collins' arguments. At the end of the day, the motion...
Just like to clarify
No.
that point.
No, there's no point for you to clarify. But I
So,
would.
point of order, Mr. Mayor. I believe I was
Councillor
misinterpreted,
Sanderson has the floor at the moment.
but I was
So can we
mentioned.
allow him to finish, and then if you've got a query at the end of that, you're welcome to ask him the question. Yep.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, I believe I'm entitled to clarify my position if it's been stated that it's not clear.
Do you need to do it immediately, or can he finish his
Well, no,
presentation?
if he wants to explain what I didn't make clear, and he's made an allegation that I was not clear. I would like to understand what was not clear about my argument.
Right. Do you
so
want
that
to
I can
finish your
restate it.
address first, and then you can clarify what wasn't
Thank
clear?
you, Mr. Mayor. If I could rephrase what I said, just so we don't run into this problem. What is incomprehensible about Councillor Collins' statements is to say that we are removing the power of the states. State government or local government will always be a creature of the states. There's no other way about it. It's just that the argument is that the constitutions at state level are not sufficient to protect the powers, although Victoria has gone some direction or some way in that direction. This is a matter of just simply recognising government in the federal constitution. Section 51 of the constitution still doesn't have any heads of power that relate to local government. It would be limited to what is mentioned about local government, either in the financial recognition part, or whether if they ever should get up, or in this part, which just simply recognises some kind of a framework to say that states shall provide for it. How states provide for it is completely a matter for the state. So that's quite wrong. Look, that's the principal point I wanted to make. I think we have the numbers. I'll leave my.
Do you have
Of course you have
any? Do you
the
have
numbers.
any clarifications? Would you wish to seek any clarification from Councillor Collins?
No, I don't.
Mr. Mayor, I
Councillor Williams.
request the motion be put.
All right. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Councillor Collins against. Next one we have is 3.2. Moved Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I will try not to take too much time. Well, this time I'll try not to take too much time. But at our ordinary meeting 4451 on the 26th of November 2018, Council passed a resolution with local effect, a very similar effect as the motion I propose at item 3.2. Councillor Williams and I were actually going to put another motion at the time that a recommendation came from staff, so we actually withdrew the motion. And that resulted on the June the 11th of at meeting number 4426 that Councillor endorses a letter of submission to planning, which in effect asks that Hunters will be removed, or the provisions of the both Part 3 Housing Code and Part 3A of the yet to come low-rise medium density housing code not apply in Hunters Hill. One of the things that's given me a bit of hope in this area with the appointment of a new Minister for Planning, I think there is some prospect for reform. Consistently with his earlier publications, the Honourable Dr Stokes was recently reported as putting a case for overhauling the culture of development in Sydney and New South Wales, arguing the current system was a recipe for mediocrity. Dr Stokes' comments were in relation to his desire to reduce the reliance on so-called spot rezonings, where the element of surprise means that it needs to be stripped from the state's planning system to reduce community mistrust and anti-development hostility. while development approved through the complying development certificate process will generally be far more smaller in scale than development approved via spot rezoning, the covert nature of the process means that CDC approved development is more capable, or is just as capable of delivering nasty surprises, which is what Dr. Stokes referred to. So the motion is to similar effect of the motion I referred to, in that it asks that that councils be able to choose whether, or that the local government, New South Wales, engage, or right to engage with the Honourable Dr. Stokes, and putting the point that given that the Planning Bill 2013 actually advocated that 80% of development would be either code or alternatively complying development. What happened is when the lower house prevented the passage of that legislation as the government wanted, it lapsed. The result, and what the upper house did was to remove the all provisions relating to the code development, which was to be locally developed. At this point in time, well, unfortunately, we can't find the figures, but the amount of development that is now done through complying development is on the increase. It went from 23% in 2011-12 to 33% in 2015-16. Now, I have looked for later figures, but I haven't been able to find them, so I don't know why they cannot be found, but one would presume that they're vastly higher than that, given that we've got new codes coming into effect. Now, all this is asking is that local government New South Wales advocate for a situation where people have the right, something that they would have had under the Planning Bill 2013, and that is that they have the right to, have local decisions made as to where complying development would apply in their areas and under what conditions it would apply. I think it's a reform that's long overdue, and I hope that with a new planning minister there is some prospect of sensible negotiation between local government New South Wales and the minister.
Anybody wishing to speak against the motion?
Oh, sorry, I've just got
Questions.
Question, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sanderson. I'm assuming this is very similar to Ride's motion that they're putting up under NESRA, which is set out in 4.
Councillor Sanderson.
No, Mr. Mayor, it's a little bit different in as much as what Ryde are asking for is that they, because of the huge impact that has been caused by compliant development there, that they want to have a greater say in it. I think the other aspect of it, I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting the details at the present time. I did look at the Ryde motion. The other thing is that one of the things that's often argued in planning law is the cumulative impact of development, and clearly there's been a lot of development in Ryde, and the result has been that it just becomes cumulative in as much as you don't take any account of what occurred there in the last few years, that it seems to put more and more in. So Ryde has got a very legitimate reason. What this motion is more about is advocating that all councils, wherever they are, should be able to go through the LSPS process that we're going through at the present time. And the government has ideas that the LSPS process should be or should be about a sort of top-down approach, where it means we've got to take on all of the aspects of the plan for the Northern District. But at the same time, we also need to bring in what our community wants, and so that as we are going through this process, and it will ultimately lead to revision of our LEPs and DCPs, my argument has been right from the time I put this first motion to council that what should occur is that local communities have the opportunity to have a discussion about where it would be appropriate to locate complying development in their areas, and if it is locatable, how, under what conditions it might comply. So you might say, okay, we'll have it in some area that's a bit remote and it's flat, so therefore you don't get overshadowing. But it shouldn't be a process that applies everywhere. And I hope that has answered Councillor.
I think that might have answered the question very well. Thank you, Councillor. Another question, Councillor?
Yeah, question through you, Mr. Mayor, of Councillor Sanderson. In 30 seconds or less, could you please clarify recommendation 1, part I? And I do agree with the substance of all of this. I'm not intending to vote against, but exclude the operation of parts. What is it actually trying? What is that part actually trying to say? Because I don't actually know the code section.
Okay. Well, if I could, Mr. Mayor,
just briefly.
Planning law is incredibly complicated. I apologise. Sometimes you can't be brief. When I've tried to cover as much as I have tonight, I've
20 seconds left.
But anyway, with relation to the code SEP of 2008, it has separate housing codes within it. Part 3 is used to be known as the General Housing Code. It's now known as the Housing Code. Part 3B is the code that will apply to.
Can I clarify my question?
No. I think Councillor should answer the question.
I'm on the way here. So Part 3B relates to low-rise, medium density development. That code is currently under suspension, although we'll cover that suspension pretty soon, although it has been applied in some areas. What it's doing is asking that we be able to exclude the operation of those codes, which are effectively complying development, from, in our case, we've requested that it be excluded from the entirety of Hunters Hill. But I'm saying, well, what's good for us is good for other people as well, and as a result, I think what should happen is that code or those codes should be a discretion by in other local government areas as to where those codes apply, and if necessary, what other restrictions they might impose as well as those, in order to have them fit in to their local plan.
Thank you. Councillor Collins, did that answer your question?
I'm sorry, but it didn't. I still don't.
Okay. Further clarification there?
What? Could you just? Is part I saying that the housing code should not? We should be able to say that it doesn't apply. Is that?
We have discretion as to where and under what conditions they should apply.
And that's part I. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good. I agree with that. Okay. Thanks for that.
General Manager advised me that we may be able to clarify that further.
Okay. That would be great.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intention as I read this is that the local environmental plans would be able to specify areas. In practicality, that would probably occur through a map form in those instruments, like you have other mapped. And it may be the whole LGA or parts of the LGA, but the LEP would be able to specify areas to which the code set does not apply.
Fantastic.
That's the intention of the first part. And the second part is that councils could, through their LEPs, then add additional controls. So, for example, it may be a landscaped area that does not apply to code sets. Normally might apply to an area that as an example. That's the way I take that as it's read. I'd take the opportunity as well to clarify that rides, I believe that rides motion was focused solely on the medium density code, and that's one distinction between this and that. This applies to general housing code as well.
And if I could to exempt low-rise medium density from land that is zoned 2B.
Very good. So that's in accordance with your understanding, Councillor
Yes.
Sanderson. Councillor Collins?
That explains it. Thank you. That's
Okay, good.
What I want to know.
Thanks very much. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What this motion is doing is trying to ensure that the local communities have some say in what happens in their local area. And I think that's a fundamental process which local government is charged with. Consult with the community, develop an understanding of what development takes place where, then build that into its LEPs and DCPs to make it give that effect. And the planning statements and whatever are part of that process. And I think it's premature for the government to require or to automatically apply these codes on local communities without the communities having a chance to go through a process and to determine what's best for their areas. We currently have a lot of pushback in our community against compliant development. We don't have the part 3 yet, the low-rise medium density, but I'm sure that will create even more angst in our community. And I think it's fair that local government have the chance to consult with its community before these things are put in place. I did see recently Lane Cove published a map showing areas which they believe fit within their communities and LEPs and whatever that would allow these codes to operate. There's small portions of their local government area, but they've been through a process. Many councils haven't had the chance to do that yet, and I think I believe it's important that our community be able to have a say in this process rather than to be just forced upon local government. And at the end of the day, if the community is happy with it, we'll endorse it. But at this stage, I'm aware that a lot of people in the community are finding compliant development very confronting and a very hostile process against what is normally a local government merit-based decision.
Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Councillor Collins.
I will speak for it.
Thank you.
No one's surprised, but I agree with all of these things. I think that we should be able to, and now that I understand what that part means, we should be able to designate areas where it shouldn't apply because outside, at the moment, you can't do it in the conservation area. The only way to exclude it is to have a conservation area, and I don't think that should be extended. So to have some method of being able to do that, I think that's a good policy. Even better would be to add additional controls. I do believe that the idea of the system is actually a good system. I just don't think it's working at the moment, and I don't think it's operating the way it should. By us being able to have additional controls which would allow complying development in accordance with the additional specifications that we require, if that is in place and if the private certification system is fixed, that needs to be fixed as well. Those two could actually work quite well together because it means that we could have a good system where private certifiers who are doing their job and we have complying development with controls that mean that developments get assessed and we actually don't have to spend the money assessing it. It's a good negative cost shift on council. So I like the idea of this policy if it can work. And in the meantime, I think this is a good measure from Councillor Sanson, and and especially the control. At my meeting with the planning minister, I personally raised that issue about additional controls. So I very strongly believe that with those controls, the system could be fixed. As for Part B, look, I guess that's on proviso that A goes past, and then we can look at areas that we do want to designate that shouldn't be compliant. One thing I will ask of all these motions, if I could ask you to have a look at page 28, which is the matter coming up later, which I understand is quite contentious about the local government delegates. conference. We have the motions of the other councils, Lynn Cove, Ku-ring-gai Ryde, that have put these motions forward. And part of the request from LG New South Wales in their guidelines, I think on page 43, criteria for motion submission, part 6 under chapter 3, they will only be included if they are clearly worded and unambiguous in nature. And my concern with this motion is that I really genuinely didn't understand part I. If you go further in this motion to part 2, which is the end of the motion, which says to avoid doubt with regard to 1A above, it is intended. You know, I think if you have to go on to
Point of clarification.
yes,
Is Councillor Collins speaking to or against the motion?
I'm speaking to the motion.
Speaking for the motion.
To the motion.
Well, it appears to me this
For the
is
motion.
against the motion.
So, well, it's
Well,
coming.
if I might have a shot here.
Yes.
I think he's trying to point out something in the motion which causes concern, even though he's voting
Yes.
for the motion.
Correct. May I continue?
Please.
What I would like to suggest is that when do these motions have to come in? Be lodged
Through you, Mr Mayor, I believe by the end of this week.
end of this week. I think that the most success we're going to have is if they're clearly worded. I don't think these are clearly worded. I understand that they've got a lot of research behind them, and Councillor Sanderson has read the codes and knows them all, and but they should be in plain language. And I would just, I don't know if they're due this week. I don't know how we would do this.
General Manager advised me they're due Monday.
Right. And is there any appetite for making them a little bit clearer amongst my fellow councillors? Considering I agree with everything in this motion, I just don't understand it.
Okay. If you...
I will put. I'm not going to go through this process if no one's going to. Everyone's going to be against it. But is there an appetite to? Can I move the motion to? Or,
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yes.
Just
What's your question,
answer
Ol?
to that?
Yes.
Through you to the General Manager. Mr Mayor. I can't remember where I read it. I read it somewhere in here that LG New South Wales can and will alter the wording of a motion to simplify it if they feel it's necessary. Can anyone remember reading that somewhere?
Yes.
I did.
Absolutely.
So that for me is, if LG New South Wales think that it's not going to be clear, they can change the wording to simplify it.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And
Incorporated.
And they can incorporate it into other
So back
motions.
to Councillor Collins.
That's exactly what they do all the time.
Back to
Okay.
Councillor Collins, please.
well, then that's fine. So I support. I commend the motion.
Right, thank you, Councillor Collins.
Thank you.
Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Right reply. Could you address the issue of clarity?
Yes, that's all I was going to address. I think the motion was drafted quite some time ago, and I think we've had ample time to consider it. I think it's quite clear to most people. Our director, who's filling in for Mr. Carruthers, they had little difficulty understanding it. With respect to the point about for the sake of clarity, simply to clarify that there was no intention in the motion to override something that was in the set code. I think anyone who has done anything in the planning law area would have little trouble understanding the motion.
All right, so can I ask you a question? Is there anything in here that you feel you would like to add to this to clarify it further? No. Or are you happy the way it is?
Or take out.
All right.
No, I'm perfectly happy.
All right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. 3.3, reform of complying development certification. Councillor Sanderson, second, and Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this was a motion that was to council for our local purposes. When I find the date, it was, apologies, the paper's in a mess going through those things with Councillor Collins, but yeah, it was put to council, I think earlier this year, and by and large it's simply asking that the local government, New South Wales, start a dialogue with the new Minister for Planning, and my hope is that there will be some a bit more latitude for reform in that area, given some of his comments in the press back in June. And the main thing they relate to is that the government has been sitting on the Lambert report since I think it was about August 2015, and about all that they've really done on exactly on the fire control side of it. In the background that I've given with the motion, I know Councillor Miles criticised me about the complexity of the of this motion when it was put for our own purposes, and I should have pointed out at the time that although the Lambert Review is quite a large document, the footnotes in these in the background reasons explains exactly where all these items have come from in the Lambert report. All of the items have their roots in the Lambert report. I think in terms of the electronic filing system, I think I'm advocating a little bit more than Lambert did, that they should be a little bit more open to public access as a means of opening up what is rather a covert process. And that also there is a new initiative which I developed in part of my research when I did that subject on planning all last year. And that new initiative is that in the event of a certifier improperly issuing a complying development certificate, the remedy of having to apply to the Land and Environment Court to have the CDC declared invalid puts a significant barrier in the way of an innocent neighbour who will be impacted by the development. For this reason, point 3 of the motion recommends that Council be able to refer CDCs where there is a question about the genuine compliance to a statutory body for proper assessment to avoid the cost of litigation. This process would expedite resolution of disputes about the validity of CDCs to the benefit of all. Now, I mean, I'm astounded that someone didn't think of that idea before I did. It is just an absolute no-brainer. I mean, there was always this reluctance for governments of all persuasions to allow any questioning of complying development certificates. Clearly the evidence that we've had, even in our area, is that there are significant problems with quite a number of them. And by allowing referral to a third party, probably a body in the planning department, would be ideal, because it relieves this council of the responsibility of all the trouble we've had to go through with all of the issues we've had in different locations around our municipality. At the same time, it's a relief to the applicant, because he will get a result quickly, and it also means that there isn't this huge impediment in the way of the innocent neighbour who has done nothing wrong but suddenly has this thing that he doesn't understand how it was ever approved, getting a sensible result. So how that wasn't thought of before, I do not know. Anyway, look, I think this is a great motion. It's certainly a call on the government to get to work on the reform of in line with the Lambert report.
Excuse me, Councillor. The General Manager suggested that we might be able to add some clarification with your okay. Some clarifications to some of the issues at the moment.
Sorry, through Ms. Mayor, not so much clarification, but more an update. As you note, there's been quite a bit of movement within the planning system And it might be helpful for councillors to hear from the acting director in terms of some of the things that are actually happening at the moment in relation to some of the points that you've made, Councillor Sanderson.
You all right with that, Councillor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Three minutes to me. So following the Lambert's recommendation, state government has been undertaking a number of actions in response to that. So for example, one of those in particular, which is quite important and also quite a difficult one to deal with, is around, I think it was point number 6, the nexus between developers and certifiers. And in October last year, there was an options paper that was released titled Improving Certified Independence. It essentially put out 3 options for the appointment of certifiers, of private certifiers. So the state put that out as an options paper for feedback. I won't go into the detail of that now because there is quite a bit of detail. Furthermore, through the e-planning portal as well. That is how they. Is my understanding that's how they look to be establishing or responding to point number 5 around publicly accessible lodgement of applications, therefore the materials also being able to be viewed by the public who are interested to see and be certain that something has been certified in their own minds is correct. There has been some changes to allow local governments to recoup some of the costs compliance up front, and even this council starting from this financial year is collecting a small percentage on even development applications that goes towards a compliance fund that assists in covering the additional compliance costs that councils have been facing. Over the last 10 years, I've seen it quadruple the compliance costs for councils. So some of those things are being done. There's still more to do, but that's probably a bit of an update on where they're up to.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody wishing to speak against? Anybody for? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sanderson is right that this matter was put as a real issue for this council long before the current debacle manifested itself. And it's something which really shows the forward thinking of council and being able to understand and interpret its residents' concerns. It's very clear quite a while ago that buying development and the private certification process that was underpinning it was flawed, and that led to a lot of community concern, a lot of reaction to the process, and a lot of the underlying issues were pointed towards private certification. At the moment, there's an extreme loss of confidence in the building and construction industry, and particularly in the community, in the way the planning process has worked, particularly in this area. I think it's very important to council to put these points to the broader local government community to help guide what is not our view, it is items which the Lambert report had put on the table back in 2015, I think Councillor Sanderson mentioned. And the government just sat on it, done nothing with them. Now we're in the muddle and mire that we find ourselves in today. I think it's important to state these issues, put them clearly on the table as issues. There may be action in the background or in recent changes to legislation that will help alleviate some of these issues, but I think it fundamentally needs to be stated, and the New South Wales Local Government Association needs to be upfront and advocating on issues.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anybody wishing to speak against or right to reply, Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank staff for their advice about the reform process that's started. At the end of the day, it's reform. It's a long way to go, and in some cases, it only goes part of the way to what we're advocating. But I guess any relief in this area is welcome. Look, that'd be the main point I'd make. I'd end the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. That's unanimous. 3.4. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor move. Councillor Sanderson. Second. Councillor Williams.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Look, this is one I've raised a couple of times, but I don't know that people that I've raised it with are fully understood, because again, it's a particularly complex little area of law. And what it relates to is section, what is now section 8.63 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, which deals with appeals to development consents. And this section actually says there is no right of appeal under this division against the following decisions. And A is a decision by the Independent Planning Commission as a consent authority under this Act in relation to the carrying out of any development that is made after a public hearing by a commission into carrying out of that development. The thing that brought this to my attention again this time was, of course, Nelson Parade, where we've got a decision that is to be made by Independent Planning Commission, and it's spelled out at the outset that I'll be holding a public hearing, and therefore the decision is unappealable. This is the piece of law that does it. Now, if I wanted to be cheeky, I could probably suggest that the whole of 8.63 be deleted, because the second part of that exempts from appeal is the determination or failure to determine an application for complying development. But I'll keep this motion to the point that I make, rather than propose something that's really not practical. What is disappointing about this is that, again, in the research I did in the course on planning law that I did last year, this problem stems from Labor's 2008 amendments to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Under these amendments, the Planning Assessment Commission, with all members appointed by the Minister, was constituted to determine applications under Part 3A of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, delegated to it by the Minister, as well as other functions requested by the Minister. Now, I'm actually reading from this essay at this stage because it's probably the most convenient way to explain things. But the PAC was recently replaced by the Independent Planning Commission. The principal difference between the two bodies is that the Independent Planning Commission is the consent authority under Part 4 for state significant or other development conferred on it, rather than for applications made under the now repealed Part 3A. And I do commend the coalition government for getting off on the right foot when they first came to office for repealing Part 3A. But unfortunately, they didn't go quite far enough. But anyway, I go on. The Independent Planning Commission, like the Planning Assessment Commission, has all members appointed by the Minister, can take on the function of other planning panels in respect of particular matters the Minister requests, and carries on the PAC's capacity to usurp the jurisdiction of the Land and Environment Court. And there is no right of appeal after a public hearing by the Commission. Then, concerningly, it would seem the Minister has the power to appoint the IPC, refer any extraordinary broad range of matters to it, and for any matter before it, direct as to who the specified members of that body or are to constitute the Commission, and require that it hold a public hearing, thus asking the jurisdiction of the Land and Environment Court. So, I mean, this is an area of legislation that needs a great deal of review. And unfortunately, although it's Labor legislation, unfortunately the Coalition has just let it stay there. What I'm suggesting is just a very mild point on it, and that is that if they do, and my point is to do with separation of powers. At the end of the day, you've got a body in the Independent Planning Commission which doesn't even have the requirements that our local planning panel has. Our local planning panel must have someone with legal background as its chair. That's not a requirement of the Independent Planning Commission. But the legislation allows the Independent Planning Commission to hold a public inquiry, and that outs the jurisdiction of the courts. So it becomes a pseudo-judicial body without necessarily having legal skills. So that's precisely why I've proposed this fourth of the motions to go to the Local Government New South Wales Conference. So I commend the motion, and I hope we'll get unanimous support for that one as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against?
Yeah,
Councillor
sorry,
Cobb.
not for this one. The problem with this is that whilst the Independent Planning Commission, and I understand that they look after state significant development. So let's just imagine someone wanted to build a tower down in Woolwich, 30-storey tower, $50 million or whatever it is. It would go to the Independent Planning Commission, the Department of Planning. Council would write a letter of opposition to it, and it would be automatically referred to the Independent Planning Commission. Is that right, Aidan? It's okay if you want.
Basically, essentially, yes, correct.
So what happens then is the Independent Planning Commission make a determination on that, and then the reason why that's a final thing is because developers are just notoriously litigious. So if we actually this motion would be a developer's dream. They would absolutely love it, because now what happens is if they don't get their state significance development through, they'll just fight it out in the Land Environment Court. So they won't get their 50 stories, they'll get their 40, and they'll come to some kind of a compromise. What this does, it opens up the floodgates to have, when we have community opposition, it opens up the floodgates for developers to basically fight this out in the Land Environment Court, try their luck there. And from my understanding is that they are more likely to come out with something than with nothing. And perhaps we could, I don't know whether if I could ask if it would be appropriate for to get some advice on the probably not to get comment on the outcomes of the Land Environment Court. That would probably not be appropriate. So I won't ask that. But what I'm this would absolutely, the developers will be licking their lips if this goes through. So as someone that doesn't want to see more giant story towers in Hunters Hill, and I don't want developers to come and think that this is going to be a land grab, because now you've actually got a second bite of the cherry. So let's just leave it as it is. This particular aspect of this system is working just fine, and there have been some significant developments that have been knocked back by the Independent Planning Commission. And I will say that even if there was a situation where council disapproved of a state significant decision that went to, and wanted to appeal it to the court, there's no way that we, like a council, would have the financial resources to take on a developer every time that we wanted to argue the toss of the Independent Planning Commission. But I've no reason to believe that the Independent Planning Commission is slanted against, at least in Hunters Hill, as far as I can see. I don't think we have any issues with the Independent Planning Commission. Wouldn't want to open up the floodgates there. And I'll just finally say that this judicial review that you're suggesting would take place, it would never be councils doing this. We don't have the money. We're not going to take on Meriton Apartments, if they try and do something here, it's not going to happen. The only people that will use this judicial review is going to be developers. So developers welcome this. I certainly would not. So I'll be not supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor. Those ones speaking for the motion. Against the motion? Do I reply, Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Interesting perspective of Councillor Collins. That's not what I hear from the
Sorry,
environment.
is it too late to ask a question?
You can ask a question. Excuse me, Councillor Sanderson.
I'm sorry.
Question.
It is through you, Mr Mayor, to Councillor Sanderson, and you might want to address this in your right of reply. Is what Councillor Collins suggesting, from a practical perspective, is that possible under your...
Okay, Councillor Sanderson,
Yes.
continue and perhaps answer the question as well.
Yeah, well, I'll start by answering the question if you like. Yes, look, that would be quite possible. But it's not what I'm hearing from the Environmental Defender's Office. But, they're saying the opposite. Look, I mean, I acknowledge that would be a possibility. Probably more broadly, I think we need greater reform in this area. The process is just, the aspect of it that grates me is that there is just so little opportunity for public input into this process, and that a non-judicial body is oust the jurisdiction of the court.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no further discussion needed, no further clarifications. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Try it again. Those in favour of the motion which is here? Against? I'll throw my weight behind the motion. Thank you.
Pro-developer motion.
3.5. Council collaborates with other agencies at all levels of government. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Secondly, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a fundamental to most organisations, if not all organisations, to have a structured process and a program to ensure that their delivery of services or whatever they're delivering are produced and done on time to the quality required within the scope. So it's important, as I've said at this council on many occasions, for councils to be able to structure their projects and programs in a way that meets industry standards. And at the moment, it is a problem across the local government industry in its delivery. And after talking to Local Government New South Wales Chief Executive Officer, they're aware of this as a problem, and they need some sort of recognition that in local government that they can pursue it as part of their program. So this is designed to put it on the agenda for Local Government New South Wales to move forward and develop a program that will enhance delivery of councils and their practitioners that are project managing a whole range of different aspects of local government delivery. So I think it's important that Local Government New South Wales take on the challenge of having a set program in place to actually help councils deliver, and particularly their local government project management practitioners to develop their capacity and capability and competency in the way that they deliver their projects. And as I've said here, it's an industry standard, not only in local government but right across all industries. About 67 or 70% of all projects fail to deliver on one of the aspects of which they were set out to do. So I don't think we can do too much. We need to do a lot more to skill and equip our staff as well as right across the industry to better deliver and better understand the project methodology.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the sentiment that project management in council is very important, but I do want to draw attention to the fact that these project management courses are already being run by LG New South Wales. We've got Introduction to Project Management. Also, local government professionals run courses, Project Management Fundamentals, Managing Vision, Direction and Projects. These are all what essentially are a way to customise and sort of bring further experience from specialised bodies into the local government realm. So it's my belief that specialised skills such as project management the body of knowledge should never be decentralised to a point across various organisations, because what ends up happening is you end up with worse outcomes. Now, I understand Councillor Williams, I think, has mentioned you're a member of the Project Management Association or something like that. I'm also a member of a number of professional bodies in accounting, governance, taxation, and they all specialise in their one area. So first, I believe that the LG New South Wales are already doing this, and I think it's a little bit, I think we should actually be across what they are offering before we sort of suggest that they develop a whole in-house program of project management when other organisations have already developed this to a significant degree. And then there are partnerships. I know the LG New South Wales do stuff with the Institute of Company Directors. I believe they probably do things with other things. So I think this is another one of sort of getting into the operational side of council. I don't think it's a motion that we should be putting to the state conference. I think perhaps we could ask and find out what exactly what is on offer from LG New South Wales. But for us to put this up when they're already running these courses, I think it would all look like this, to be honest. So I don't support it.
Do you wish to speak for? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had motions in recent meetings about shared services, and to me this seems of a similar nature. That we're putting something into areas where it can be done jointly as part of an organisation and benefit. And I can see the benefits in having skills that will mean that councils are better able to communicate and manage projects. So I'll be brief, but I do support the motion.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak against? Wish to speak for the motion? So, Councillor Williams, if I may. Councillor Williams, are you suggesting that the courses currently being run are insufficient for what a council would need in this area? Or we are not availing ourselves of the services that exist? Or just for clarification, please.
Would you like me, in my right of reply, address the issue as well as Councillor Collins' issues? There's no doubt there's a range of opportunities out there for any project manager to access courses. There's a wide range of courses out there to suit particular needs within the industry of project management. But what I'm suggesting here is local government, New South Wales, take the initiative to pull together for local government what are those very broad-based array of opportunities out there, identify those which are most beneficial to local government, and promote a holistic approach rather than people have to find their own little bits and pieces. And there just needs to be a greater recognition and development of an understanding within local government of the importance of doing these courses, of building capacity within the workforce to strengthen the delivery which the local government is charged to do for its residents. So I see it as being more an overarching approach that local government New South Wales should be taking in providing guidance, providing leadership and fostering and enhancing, as I say here, capability and competency in this area. It's not to replace or redesign or find another set of courses. It's about pulling together all the bits of jigsaw puzzle and providing a one-stop shop for local government to access what they need either in-house or externally to develop those skills which are needed in our service delivery areas. So I don't see it as separate from all those courses and all those opportunities. I see it as a need for our peak body to provide leadership in directing and guiding local government practitioners towards the most suitable and appropriate way of them developing their capability and competence.
Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. The next item we have is item 4.1. It's the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference. And I believe in here there's an opportunity to consider increasing the number of councillors that attend that conference. Councillor Sanderson.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the motion. I would suggest that the number of councillors attending remain as indicated.
Who's seconder for that? Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this conference is a great opportunity, and I'm very happy for yourself and Councillor Williams to be our voting representatives. At the same time, at this point in time, I've not attended a local Government New South Wales conference. I have, however, contributed to the motions will be taken there. So I would like to put myself forward as a non-voting representative. I don't see any reason to alter the motion beyond that. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't support the motions that National Office suggested to other councils.
So you're saying that you would like an extra person to attend the conference?
No. I think the recommendation says, if I am correct,
Item 1.
One.
Mayor, Councillor Williams and General
Oh,
Manager.
okay. Sorry, I might have the recommendation mixed up. I think what it says is that there is finance available for 2 voting delegates and 2 non-voting delegates.
Yes.
Yes. So that's what I think we should take for 4 delegates.
Oh, okay. Good.
4 delegates. So yourself,
agree.
Councillor Williams, and then 2 non-voting delegates.
I agree.
Which
Sorry.
I would put my hand up
I
for one.
misunderstood. All right.
Sorry, speak against the motion.
Speak against the motion?
Yes.
Councillor.
The reason I speak against the motion is because it's a bit. I think it's presumptuous to suggest that council, when we brought the motion back last meeting, it wasn't suggested that it would automatically be Councillor Williams. Initially, when Councillor Williams was deputy mayor, he was made the delegate. I think that as the obviously the mayor and I think the deputy mayor is the 2 most senior members of the council should be the voting delegates. I will state that I'm not going to be the deputy mayor at this conference. I'm not going to be. I don't think I have the support for another term. But whoever that deputy mayor is should be the voting delegate. And I think that is consistent with our policy of the external bodies. And I think the only reason why we didn't cover that when we did NESROC and the civic risk, is because this isn't being a delegate to New South Wales is not an enduring position. It is for a conference, and so it should be determined at each conference. I understand Councillor Williams has been a delegate at the first, our two Alga conferences, the first LG New South Wales conference, the Albury conference earlier this year. I think having been a delegate 4 times, I don't think that's really fair on the rest of the councillors. That it's not sort of I don't know why that would be the case. It's not about being fair, but there seems to be some sort of favouritism towards Councillor Williams being the delegate everywhere. So I would like to suggest make an amendment that the and I think that if there are look, I would like to go. I didn't go to the conference last year. I went to the conference in the first year, and I would like to be I think it's actually, I think for $900 bucks, I think, or 840, I actually don't think it's bad value, because there are a lot of stalls around there. There are other councillors, and I think it is a good opportunity to, and I think we all went at the first one. So I'd have no problem increasing that. I think there is a budget for it anyway, and if not, perhaps if the councillor wanted to forego something else, then maybe that can be rearranged. But I would like to make an amendment at this point that the deputy mayor be the other delegate, whoever that may be. Do I have a seconder for that?
You do. I'll second that.
Thank you. I think, that's maybe...
Wish to speak further to that?
Well, look, I think it's pretty straight. I might go for right of reply, but perhaps if anyone wants to speak...
Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment to the motion? Anybody wish to speak for the amendment to the motion, which is to make the mayor and the deputy mayor the voting delegates? The amendment, rather. Would I put the motion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour of
the amendment?
The amendment, thank you. Do you wish to have right of reply?
Oh, no, I think it's a pretty fair. Everyone's in agreement with that. So I'm happy to put the amendment.
I'll put the amendment to the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Very good. So we move back to the amendment, the motion, the original motion. We wish to have further discussion on the delegates to the conference.
Yes,
because
attendees.
Seeing I'm not a delegate to the conference, I'd like to be able to attend the conference. So if I could be included in the attendees of the conference.
So who would like to attend the conference in this room? I would. So that's 4 of us. So 4 of us attending. Is there room for more than 4 of us to attend this, may I ask? Because it's in New South Wales, it's just the cost of admission.
Just add to that. Through you, Mr Mayor, for councillors' benefit, there are funds available within the overall councillors' training budget. So if council chose to send more councillors to the conference, we can review the budget and reprioritise the training that's allocated for this financial year as an option.
So I think there is option to send more than 4 delegates if you'd like to, if you're a mind to. Anybody would else like to attend that conference? So at the moment we've got Councillor Collins, Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson and myself, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Crasson.
The timing is not good.
Do we think that in Councillor Miles' absence, do we think he may like to attend?
That's a...
No, he doesn't.
Is it possible to park that part now? When does early bird close? 9th of September.
No.
Bring that part to the... Does it even need a motion?
Well, I think we need to agree. We could make a motion that it's open for all councillors to attend.
Yeah.
Somebody could amend that.
Oh, okay. I'll
This
move that.
conference, because it's in Sydney.
Yeah. I'll move
because
that.
it's in-
Right.
Yeah.
that,
So the amendment to your motion is that we open it up so the deputy mayor and all councillors have the ability to attend if they so wish.
yeah, I think that's fair.
All right? All right? So we go back to the amended motion. Any further discussion needed? I'll put the motion. Those in
sorry,
favour?
Mr Mayor, it's still not amended. Point
Right.
1, just before we put the motion,
Okay.
says that council nominate delegates together with the mayor and the deputy mayor. And then at number 1, I think we have council nominate delegates, that council make attendance available to all councillors who wish to attend, or something like that.
Councillor Collins' motion, if I might, Councillor.
Sure, it just hadn't been put in before we
I know,
voted
but
on
what
it,
words
so-
would you like in there?
Well, those words.
Permit all councillors to attend.
Yeah. I don't need
Wish
to.
to, should they wish?
Yes.
Should they wish?
Yeah.
We all know what we mean. I don't mind.
All right. You happy with that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Look. Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Just before we voted on it, I just
Okay.
wanted to-
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Nominate delegates with their deputy mayor and general manager to attend the New South Wales. The mayor are voting delegates, and then where's the attend as non-voting? Yeah. And
If
attend
they so wish.
If they so wish. Yeah. That's fine. Yep. That sounds good.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. So are you voting against the motion, Councillor Sanderson? Councillor Williams, are you voting against the motion too? No. Just Councillor Sanderson voting against the motion.
That would have been unanimous.
Moved on to, well, we've done 4.2.
Move the recommendation.
Hold on just a minute. 4.3.
Yeah, 4.3.
4.3, administration of elections. Councillor Collins?
Yes, I'd like to move the
Seconder?
recommendation.
Councillor Williams? Councillor Collins?
Yes. I will just speak briefly about this. I find it, yeah, it was a very interesting report and very comprehensive. And whilst the idea of having a private operator, run the elections is, I'm very cautious about that. It is definitely worth looking into because I noticed that, and maybe this is a question to the General Manager, because I do understand that council can actually run their own elections, and you don't want to. it's a lot of work, is it? I mean, no, okay.
It's tricky.
General Manager?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I don't believe we have the resourcing to do that on our own.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, I think we'll have more discussion about it. When it comes up, I would like a lot of I'd like in the report that comes back a lot of clarification as to the details of how it would be different. For instance, if someone's doing the wrong thing on election day, how does that fit in with a private operator, enforcement and all that, or is that still a complaint? Things like just the details of the operational differences between, because obviously we trust the AEC and a new operator. Give them a go if they've got all the answers. But I'd also like to, if I can ask, when that report is brought back. I know we've had some changes with the way the system, with the preference counting, all that kind of stuff. Whether it's a briefing or not, if we could, or even in the report, so everyone could see exactly how it works, that would be helpful.
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody wishing to speak against? 4.4. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Unanimous. Thank you. 4.4. Item 4.4, Hunters Hill Draft Local Strategic Planning Statement. Moved Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Crasser. Councillor Collins.
I think it's just deferred back.
Any further discussion? Report, receive and note. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 4.5, Development Applications. Councillor Crasser,
it's a
seconded. I will do them all as a block.
Yeah.
Questions, yeah.
4.5. Councillor Crasser, seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor Crasser.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just have a couple of questions. Do I need to stand up for questions?
You should.
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. On the first item, I'm just curious, it says the determination date was the 10th of July, and the resident, as I understand, hasn't still been notified of their approval. What's the process for? How long does that take normally?
General Manager.
Mr Mayor, to the acting director.
Through Mr. Mayor, the notification for this, so it was determined on the 10th of July. The notification itself, I understand, has been sent out. I asked that question, that was sent out, but if that's what's been heard, I will confirm that again, or I'll actually look at it myself. The issue, and I've seen an email come in from this resident who's concerned that the stop work order has not been lifted, so the consent's been issued, but the stop work order hasn't been lifted.
I think that's a separate issue, isn't it?
Sorry, yes.
To
I probably haven't answered the
Mark
question.
Street.
Yeah.
I was talking the wrong one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, is it, am I talking the right one? Okay.
No,
Sorry, I
I was looking
apologise.
at the wrong one. Sorry.
I probably haven't answered the question fully. The consent should be sent out with approximately a week afterwards at most.
But it can still have a stop work order.
Yes, a stop work order is a separate documentation. It's a letter that basically gives the stop work notice.
Thank you.
That's your question?
And then thank you, yes. And then the other question about the next item about the lift well at 28 Lyndhurst Crescent. I've been following this for a little while, and I know that the lift well has already been built, the construction is complete. And so this consent, I'm just to help me understand, how is this enforced now? Is there a time limit put on them meeting these requirements, firstly? The other question I have is that Part A, number 7, it says the lift is not to provide access to the roof level at any time except for it being maintained or serviced. And residents nearby are concerned that the lift that has been built does go to the roof and didn't need to and shouldn't. And if there's a lift that goes to the roof and opens on the roof, then it's not just being used for maintenance, it's a lift that goes to the roof and opens on the roof. And so 7 seems a little confusing as far as that goes. And then number 10, above established the structure. So as I say, it's already been built. And what the time frame on that is. And then lastly, because this house actually had some Land and Environment Court rules on it before this illegal structure was put there, and it's a new owner who wasn't aware of those previous Land and Environment Court rules, that the structure on the roof had to be clear glass that could be seen through, and the roof had to be a certain height and so on. And so some of the concern is if this owner sells, which they could do any time, if this owner sells, where will the following owners see that this is the case and what they are and aren't allowed to do with a lift that now happens to open onto their roof?
They're good questions and they're tricky questions.
So I thought you might want to take them on notice. But
it probably is one
they're my
to
questions.
answer a deal. What I would say initially is that the information that's provided here is only part of the story. So this is only saying what has been consented to through the approval. Any associated with that might be other notices and orders and so forth, which all certain things are done. But if that's all right, I might take, Mr Mayor, I might take that on notice.
Yes,
Thank
take it
you.
on notice.
Just so that we can give
Come back.
residents assurance
Yeah.
that all those things are considered.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion required? I'll put the recommendation, receive and note. Those in favour? Against, that's carried. 4.6. And are we able to move a block here, or do we still have further queries? Which ones do you have queries on?
4.6.
4.6. And from 4.7 to 4.10, are they okay? Move as a block? Let's go to 4.6. Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Williams.
Just a question, Mr Mayor, through you, the General Manager. I've asked time and time again for more description, more understanding of the determinations that are conducted in relation to tree removal. We seem to have now slipped back to a process where there's no indication as to reason for its removal, no indication as to what tree is going to replace it, how mature the tree is. I noticed that a cheese tree is being allowed to be removed, which is a significant tree that shouldn't necessarily, unless there's rural justification, be removed. So at the moment, considering the overall loss of tree canopy in Hunters Hill, I again ask through you, Mr Mayor, to the staff, or to the General Manager, could we please have more information as to why and what is going to replace these trees? Because in particular the cheese tree, my understanding that is a tree that we shouldn't lose lightly.
Very good. Are you happy to take that on notice and provide more information to Councillor Williams?
Again, I think it's in terms of the general approach to the way these reports are prepared. For refusal, there's a whole range of justification. For approval, there's no indication as to the basis of it. I've given to the General Manager a copy of a notification that I received in the mail, which to me doesn't give any indication as to what is proposed to be removed, why it's going to be removed, and what its replacement will be, and how effective that replacement will be. So, to me, I would get more comfort by knowing more details.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll make a note and attempt to provide more substantial information in the future. Thank you. So, any further discussion? If not, I'll put the receive and no recommendation. Those in favour, against, that's carried. 4.7, did you want to
move everything
from 4.7 through to 4.10? Is everybody happy to move that?
No, there's just an amendment required in 4.9.
Okay, let's go with 4.7, 4.8 and 4.10. Councillor Collins?
moved.
Seconded?
No, 4.8.
All right, let's just work through them.
4.6. Can I just? Oh, okay.
Let's work through them.
4.7.
4.7. Councillor Collins, Councillor Williams. Any further discussion needed?
No.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried. 4.8.
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Any further discussion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I think it's important to comment and note the function that was held by Le Besnay Friendship Committee, Hunters Hill Le Besnay Friendship Committee, the other night at the Hunters Hill Club, which was the final step in this year's exchange program. It was a highly successful evening with 90 odd people attending, and a very moving occasion, and I recommend to councillors, if they get the chance to go along, just to get an opportunity to see how this program impacts on those students. It was a life-changing opportunity for them. They have an experience that would not otherwise be available, And it's one that not only enriches the visiting student, but also the student host families, and they build relationships that I'm sure that would last a lifetime. I think it's important that we note how successful this year's program has been, which is in the footsteps of many years of successful programs. So I congratulate the Huntersville-Lavesne Friendship Committee for yet again another very successful year, and for their contribution to the development and well-being of those students and the families that are associated with the program.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any further discussion on this? Councillor Williams, it was an excellent event. The committee did a great job. The volunteers that take the students on the excursions week after week and do all of the planning and all of the travel arrangements. It's a big job. They take a long time to do, and we fortunately had a very good group of students this year. Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 4.9, report on councillors' briefings. Move Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor McLaughlin.
No, I'm just going to.
Oh, sorry.
I
forgot. Sorry.
I think this is the one where Property New South Wales came in and gave us a briefing on Nelson Road. And Councillor Williams, you weren't present for that.
That's right.
That's right. So you're down as present.
I shouldn't be, because I was.
So that this needs to be. And I don't think
Someone else wasn't there. Councillor Collins?
Yeah,
Collins
they're there, and
Councillor
Sanderson.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Williams, you weren't that?
No.
So we'll amend that. Any further discussion on that? Receive a note. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 4.10. Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Williams. Any discussion required? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Any further business, councillors? Any questions to be
We've got a
put?
late item.
I'll light on. Thank you very much. We do too.
We did it at the start.
Really start. Apologies.
Councillor Miles, we dealt with it earlier at the beginning. We did.
No, it was only a
Leave of absence. Leave of absence?
Yeah.
All right, move Councillor Collins and Councillor Williams. Acknowledge the leave of absence of Councillor Miles. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Any further business? Questions? Meeting closed 9:25. Thank you very much, councillors.